Welcome to In a World with Real Media. I'm your host, Brad Burrow. In this podcast, we'll dive into the lives of the most successful people in business. We'll learn how they overcame adversity, took advantage of opportunities, and learned from their experiences. Learn from our experts, get inspired, then go live your story. It's In a World with Real Media. Hello and welcome to the In a World with Real Media podcast. I'm Brad Burrow, and today we have special guest Melissa Campbell, who is a nurse practitioner and the founder of intelligenthealth, and brianprice, her partner. I'm really excited about today because I think we're going to educate people just like I was educated about 6 weeks ago or whenever it was. You know, I've known for a long time that there are problems that are universal with our food supply, with things that are happening, the health epidemic. I was telling you, I watched another podcast the other day with Jordan Peterson and Joe Rogan, and Jordan Peterson came out and said the number one health problem that that people have is insulin resistance, and I agree with that. And so I want to get your thoughts on that. But before we get into all of those things, because be prepared to take, this is one of those podcasts you're going to want to take notes. I mean, you're going to want to understand what's happening. But Melissa, I wanted to just first get a little bit of your background, how you got to the place where you are right now, kind of coming through the health system. And then Brian, I want to talk about your background, owning a painting company, the stresses of that, the stresses of life that kind of got you to a point where you needed to go through Melissa's program, and look at you. You're like transformed, right?
Yeah, it's amazing.
So Melissa, if you can start first, just tell me, why'd you get into medicine? Tell me a little bit where you grew up. Just give us the 411 about you.
I'm from Overland Park, Kansas, born and raised. I grew up with some allergies and health issues. I also had an uncle who was chronically ill, so it seemed like I was always around the healthcare system. Went into nursing, and then went on to get my master's at KU. I graduated from their program in 2010, and my first job was working with a cardiology practice, and I did that for 6 years.
Was that here in Kansas City?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was at it was Overland Park Cardiovascular and associated with Overland Park Regional Medical Center. And then I worked there as a hospitalist as well. And then for COVID, I kind of left the hospitalist realm, and I went and I worked COVID in 2 places in Texas, Wisconsin, and Arizona. So it was
Did you travel all those places?
Mm-hmm.
Is that right? Wow.
For about a year and a half. I was very active on the front lines of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And then my father got sick with stage 4 colon cancer. And so that brought me back home. And then shortly after, once he kind of stabilized, I went back to working as a hospitalist. I worked for a little bit at DePaul in St. Louis, and then came out to Advent, South Overland Park.
Yeah.
And then eventually opened Intelligent Health.
Now, how long ago was that? Do you remember when you started Intelligent Health?
I opened it part-time about a year ago, I'd say.
It's going well. We're hearing lots of great things. So.
Yeah, so we went full-time in the beginning of January. And that's been awesome because now I'm just kind of as needed at the hospital and getting to do this, which is what I'm really passionate about full-time. Okay,
so Brian, we're going to come back to you, I promise.
You're good.
You're eye candy right now.
Yeah, no, you're good. You're good.
So first, explain what a nurse practitioner is, because, you know, you can write prescriptions, you can diagnose issues. I mean, you're really a doctor.
So our training it's 2 different schools of thought. and we go through a master's program, and I believe now you have to have your doctorate. But we are taught to, diagnose, treat, we write prescriptions, we see patients, and there are many states now that are independent practice states, like Kansas, to where we can practice on our own. So where like a physician assistant has to work under a physician, nurse practitioners can be autonomous and practice independently.
I don't know why we need doctors other than like if you get in a car wreck or something or some major illness, why would we go somewhere else?
Well, there's different specialties, and we have our scope of practice, but obviously we respect our physicians and all the rigorous training that they do, which is more than what we do. And so if we get into a situation where maybe we're not quite sure or we need more help, we have them there to support us. And like in the hospitals, we collaborate as a team. So, the nurse practitioner may be seeing all the new admissions in the hospital while the physician is coming behind them and seeing all the patients that they're rounding on and discharges.
Yeah. Awesome. So Brian, let's switch to you just a little bit here. So give me a little bit of your background. So you have a painting company.
Yep.
It's stressful owning a business, right?
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about just your background up before meeting Melissa.
Yeah. So I'm from Kansas City as well. Funny story, actually. We grew up 3 blocks from each other. So
I did not know that.
Yeah. So
really,
yeah.
That's
so
crazy.
I'm a couple years older than her, but actually, where I lived, I walked past her house every morning on my way to school, to middle school. So funny story. So we figured that out way after.
Did you know each other?
No, because I was a couple years ahead of her. So, like when she was going into middle school, I was going into high school. When she was going, and then I switched high school, so we went to different high schools.
I feel like we need some Twilight
but
Zone music right now.
Yeah, when we figured that out, it was crazy. That
Yeah, and he knew one of my really good friends. I just didn't know him. So
yeah,
Wow.
So
Amazing.
born and raised in Overland Park. Went to K-State. Got a degree in psychology, actually.
Is there a problem here?
But yeah, no. So, but
Do you do this all the time?
Yeah, exactly. So, but was kind of always in that realm of wanting to kind of help people and do that sort of stuff. But
yeah, because then you worked as a child abuse investigator.
yeah, I was a child abuse investigator
kidding.
for DFS on the Missouri side.
No kidding.
Yep.
Wow.
So I did that and licensed foster parents for 4 years.
That's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah, that's
right
a
there.
whole nother thing. So
Yeah.
so did that, and then was working for financial investment companies. So I did that from 2005 to 2023, basically. But in the meantime, opened up in 2019. I opened up my LAK painting company, so which was called LAK for my kids, Landon, Addie, and Kenna. So,
is
so
that
yeah,
right?
so yeah,
Okay.
so we got 4
Yeah.
crews. We got 4 crews. They do all the work, but so yeah, so did that, and now I'm doing that full time with my partner Adam Smith, and so we love being able to transform the business and grow the business and really make a difference in people's lives that way with painting and taking care of their needs that way.
Yeah. Don't
Yeah.
look at the walls when you walk out of here, okay?
I won't. I know. Once you see something, you can't unsee it. So
like,
I don't
oh
point
my
out
gosh.
anything.
That's funny. So I want to kind of talk about the intersection of you two when you both met. You were in a pretty high stress situation, life, kids, relationship, owning a company.
Right.
The last thing you're probably worried about was your health at that point. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That
Yeah.
health was on the back burner. I was just kind of going through the motions, I'd just gone through pretty nasty divorce, and
Yeah.
don't want to get too much into that.
Yeah.
But
So
so
talk about the state of
went
mind that
through
you're in, and,
Yeah.
mentally.
Yeah, mentally, I was just really struggling. So was just low energy, low motivation, just kind of going through the motions, really, not living life, not really enjoying what I was doing, just kind of going through the motions and
Day by day.
yeah. There wasn't, you just kind of do what you do to get through.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, but then met Melissa. So we met
Now,
almost
was
3
there
years
like
ago.
a white light behind her or anything, and angels singing, "Whoa," that kind of
Something
thing?
like that, yeah. So, but
So, Melissa, what did you
yeah.
think when you met Brian? It was like, could you tell that there were potential? I don't want to get into the details of what was going on with you, but I mean, you can probably look at people and say, well, I could help this person.
Actually, some people will like tell you all about their crazy ex or, whatever. Brian didn't mention it. He didn't mention anything, just was very positive about how, he would take his kids to their sports and how, it kind of
Yeah.
sounded like they were his life. And he didn't say anything bad about his ex.
But from a health standpoint, I mean, you could probably tell maybe that he needed some help.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed like, he maybe was kind of lost in the system and not really sure where to go with the issues that transpired. And he was just emotionally drained.
Yeah.
And so when that happened, there was a specific event for when that happened, and it really took a toll on him. And I was like, the one thing that you can control is yourself. And so we're going to take this as a positive and an opportunity, and we are going to rebuild you, and you're going to come into the clinic, and we're going to get your blood, and we're going to go from there.
What did you think when you heard that?
Well, so I knew that something was off, and at this point in time, so we'd been together for a little over a year and a half when she had started the clinic. And so I knew good things were happening at the clinic. I could hear her talking about patients coming in and getting changed and kind of focus on what she was seeing. I was hearing some of the results, right?
Yeah.
But I was dealing with the company, my painting company, and so didn't have a whole lot of time.
You weren't really focusing
it wasn't,
on that.
I was focused on my stuff. We were busy season. And so, but she's like, you got to come in and at least get your blood drawn. Let's start there and see what the results are and kind of go from there. And
were you surprised?
Yeah. So, I mean, I came in, got the blood work. My testosterone level was around 250, which supposed to be between 700 and 1400. So, I mean, it was ridiculous. Cortisol levels were through the roof. So that's all your stressors and like how your body handles hormone, stress and things like that. And so
What about weight?
I
mean, you look so fit right now. It's like I can't imagine that you looked like that then.
It was a lot of I was definitely overweight. I mean, and there was definitely lifestyle choices that I needed to change up as well. But
did they know your first name at McDonald's?
Yes. The
Hey,
fast
Brian,
food is not a good
Big
thing
Mac
to
coming.
be doing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Don't eat out of a window.
What I was eating, it was bad decisions all the way around.
Yeah.
But it was eye opening. And so Melissa's like, let's get you optimized. Let's get you fixed. And let's get you on some testosterone to get the levels up to where you actually start feeling more like yourself and not so drained. And it was
How long did it take before you actually started realizing that, man, I am feeling better?
Yeah, I mean, it takes a little while to get into it, but I think within a month, 4 to 6 weeks was like, initially you get a little bit of a bump, but you don't really recognize it. I think the biggest thing that I recognized was after 4 to 6 weeks, I'd been on it. And if I would miss a dose, then I would start feeling that way that I was feeling before.
Really?
And so that was more eye-opening, was like, because when you just slowly start feeling better, you don't recognize the change, but then you miss that dose and you're like, oh, wow, that really, like, I just started feeling sluggish. And then the eye-opening part was that you're like, that's how I used to feel all day, every day. That was my good.
Yes.
That was my okay spot. And now it's like, that's a terrible spot to be in. And Melissa introduced me to one of her really good friends, Jillian McCollum, who works at the hospital with her, but she also owns
JM
personal training. And so she got me in with her. And so Jillian has really helped me kind of curb my appetite, or not curb my appetite, but fixed my diet.
Yeah.
She created some workout plans for me. And I had another good buddy who introduced me to Beastified Gym, which is right by the clinic, ironically. So, and so between Melissa getting my hormones fixed up and Jillian getting the training program set up and Beastified Gym, I mean, it all came together, and it's
So you were
amazing.
sold at
Yes.
that point, weren't you?
Yes,
I
it
mean,
was absolutely sold.
so much so where you're actually working
Yeah. So
at the clinic.
So yeah, so I volunteer my time whenever I'm not running painting stuff. So, but I love being involved. It's being involved with the patients, coming in, watching how they interact, and like the results, and
Yeah.
sharing my experience. Especially, I love meeting the new patients that come in, because I have the ability to share kind of my story and what I went through, and kind of the fact that, you know, this is where you can get to, and what you go through. So
Yeah, you have a lot of people
it's
coming
cool.
in, Melissa, this, you know, that are kind of broken, I bet. You know, it's like they come in limping in, and
Yeah, and I remember when, you know, Brian was going through all of this, and I think maybe to a point you comfort yourself through like food or alcohol or, you know,
Yeah.
whatever. And after Brian went through this transformation, I remember him saying, like, he'd never really said anything about the clinic too much before that. It was just kind of like he said, like, kind of like in the back of his mind, like, oh, I do the painting company, she does that.
Yeah.
And we had, you know, healthy habits at home, but what is always like consistency, right? That's
Yeah.
where you got to drive in. And so I remember him being like, you know, I think I want to be a part of this. Like, I think I want to help people change their lives. Like, I want them to know that you can be in this bad spot and you can get optimized and get to a lot better place. And testosterone is the confidence hormone. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think it really impacts people. Not only, you know, it's the powerhouse of a man's body. So, I mean, both men and women need estradiol and testosterone, but this is what impacts a man's energy levels, his confidence, his edge, and men know when they feel like they're losing that, and strength and endurance.
It's a helpless feeling, you know. It's like I can speak from experience on that. It's like you know, owning a business, you know this, you know this now too. There's a lot of stress that comes with that, and if you can't stay positive, you know, that's a very important thing in having a successful business, in my opinion, is just being positive about we're going to be successful. We're going to do this. It's going to work. I'm going to do this. I'm going to have a positive attitude, because there are so many negative things coming at you all the time that if you can't stay positive, and I think most people think, well, that's just their personality, but there's some chemistry to that.
Yeah, and cortisol is the alpha hormone, and all these hormones push on each other. So getting your levels optimized and balanced is key. And hormone therapy is the key to longevity, aging gracefully, slowing down aging. Like, there unfortunately is a lot of misconception, confirmation bias around hormone therapy that primarily pertains to synthetic hormones versus bioidentical hormones.
So I have that written down right here. I'm going to ask you that question.
Okay.
No, you're doing great. I threw you there for a second, didn't I? She's
I was like,
wait a second. Good thing it's a podcast.
yeah. So,
But before we get into that, though, I don't mean to cut you off, but I want to get people up to date on kind of your training.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, you've come through being working in cardiovascular or whatever that was called. That probably gave you some really good foundational knowledge. I would imagine, right?
yeah, it was like intense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I wrote down WorldLink
Okay.
that you've been trained through their
Yeah.
system. Tell me what that means. What is WorldLink and who is Dr. Rose? Is that
Dr. Neil Rousier works with WorldLink Medical, and he is a leading expert in hormone therapy. And he had his own, he started out as a ER physician and, started thinking that there was more to treating chronic disease. Also, curious about why women kept coming in having not just one miscarriage but two, and what was really going on. And so he started doing rigorous research, had his own hormone therapy clinic in Palm Springs, I believe, for like 25 years, and then started with WorldLink, who are basically your expert protocols for hormone therapy, all science-based, evidence-based, and he has taught thousands and thousands of providers just like me. And when you go there, there's physicians and nurse practitioners from all over the United States, and they may be an OBGYN, a urologist, a cardiothoracic surgeon, a cardiologist, family practice, or internal medicine, or GYN. But we have all come to figure out that hormone therapy is the key to preventing and reversing disease. And so this works.
You want to talk about your dad's situation at all?
So my dad was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer with Mets to the liver, and when we first went and met,
That sounds really bad. Like that.
yeah,
I mean,
it was really
something you don't want to hear.
No, so I was with him. So they couldn't figure out where the cancer was coming from. Like, it wasn't showing up on CT scan. So I was with him because the liver wasn't the primary site, and that's where they were seeing it. And so I was with him when he went and had his colonoscopy. And I remember Dr. Allen came out and he said, I'm really sorry. We couldn't pass the scope past the sigmoid colon because the mass is too big. And so when we went and saw his oncologist, he basically said, if you do nothing, you have about a month. And
Wow.
so they had a type of chemotherapy to offer. He said, but only, 40% of people respond. So, yeah. And I remember it was like, they said, he's been approved already for 99 chemotherapy treatments. And 99. And I was like,
not 100.
but it
That's
was like
crazy.
Red flag.
Yeah.
And so I spent all these years like in mainstream medicine, and when your family member gets a diagnosis like that and you're sitting on the other side, it looks very different, because I can remember if, when I was doing cardiology, if somebody would have came in and said, I'm on red yeast rice for cholesterol and I'm on, whatever, I would have been like, we don't know what's in that. You need to stop taking that right away. And now I feel totally different. So he did have excellent results with the chemotherapy, but we also did some other things like starting fenbendazole and ivermectin, which there were studies to support, but of course that therapy doesn't make the same revenue as 99 chemotherapy.
Have you heard what Mel Gibson said about that on the Joe Rogan podcast?
I think I saw it. Yeah, he
Yes.
said they're doing the things.
Yes.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And so it was in.
Sorry, I keep saying Joe Rogan
Yeah.
podcast, but
Well,
I mean,
it was in 2022 when he was diagnosed, and so we started these things. Also believe in cellular health, like let's replace what your body, naturally makes. Like, and we did a few different things, but we ended up having really good results. And I remember I wanted him to get a PET scan because all this time they hadn't done a PET scan, and they said, well, he doesn't need a PET scan. And I said, like, insurance won't pay for it. And I said, yeah, well, for restaging. I was like, we're not going to just leave this cancer in the colon, like, and I said, okay, so we get the PET scan, and it shows that there's just a little bit of cancer left. And so even though he was 80 years old, he was in such good health and had responded so well, they went in and they did cut out that small amount of cancer. The problem is that it came back in the liver. So he's had a couple of treatments for that. But like I said, they gave him a month, and that was in 2022. And I mean, just this past winter when we had all that snow, I mean, we were out in the driveway, shoveling snow together. Like, he has done remarkably well. His, cancer doctor can't believe it.
Yeah.
And so I think that was definitely an eye-opening experience for me about mainstream medicine.
Yeah.
But while they can do a lot of good things, those aren't the only things out there.
Yeah. Great for the chemotherapy companies, right?
Right.
Making that drug.
Yeah.
They're
Follow the
doing
money.
great.
Yeah, well, and that's what, so, as far as like my background, when I said, so I don't think I think you realize it a little at the nursing level, but at the nurse practitioner or provider level, it's a whole different ballgame. And so I remember that I came out of school and I was just really naive. And so you're taught, you want to follow all the guidelines, because if you have to go to court over something, those
Yeah.
guidelines are what's going to protect you in court. So you're like,
Yeah.
okay, basically this is my Bible. This is what I need to know, and this is what I'm supposed to do. And so you're ready to defend those guidelines with everything. And then you have drug reps coming in every day bringing you lunch. And so for me, I thought, well, this is great. I'm going to have my patients on the best medicine, the newest medicines. And, I've got a rep here that's got all the latest research and studies. And, I'm going to try to do the best I can for my patients. And I'm going to just be doing everything right. And then you realize maybe that's not what we're doing here. Like, the blinders come off and you follow the money and you look at the research and you realize that things are much more politically and economically driven than you ever thought. And this is an important one for patients to understand. Do not go to your medical provider and blindly trust them and think that they have your best interest in mind. While many of them may, that is not something that you can trust. You must advocate for yourself, and you must do your own research just like you would with any other industry, because this is a business.
Yeah. That's evident more than ever, I think.
Yeah, I think with COVID and everything that happened there, people are more aware that just because it's healthcare doesn't mean that you can trust it, and that you do need to be looking out for yourself. And over the years, I have seen so much injustice, and people have no idea.
Why aren't there more people like you, Melissa? I mean, I think about it. It feels new and cutting edge, but you just don't see very many. Brian Morris, our buddy, told me about you, and I'm like, okay, that sounds very interesting. And then I meet you, and I'm like, wow, this is amazing. Why are there not more people like you?
I think that some people never leave that headspace of these are the guidelines, this is what I went to school, this is what I was taught, and like you aren't taught in medical school or NP school anything about hormone therapy. And if you are working where the reps come, they are pushing their drugs, their synthetic drugs on you. And so you're not really learning anything about bioidenticals. And, you know, as much as I have worked with some very amazing people and some great people, but there are some people in the industry that it's a paycheck. It's a job, just like anything
Check it off,
else.
move on.
Yep.
Yeah.
The other side is that you have these big corporations that take over practices, and they have demands, productivity demands that they want these providers to meet. They need to be seeing this many people and this amount of time, or they're fat, stupid, and lazy. Like, you know, like they want to see the money.
Yeah. So a little side story. My previous doctor, he got let go from his current place that he was working because he wasn't hitting numbers, and moved to a different system. But they were, they brought him on, did all this marketing. He's going to be a part of this. I won't say the healthcare system, but did all this stuff, and he didn't hit his numbers, and they're like, you got to go.
Yeah, he didn't realize as a doctor he signed up for a sales job, right?
Unbelievable. It's like, how about you be responsible for getting? I mean, in their mind, he was responsible.
Yeah.
So you could see where they're going to be numbers driven. They're going to lose their jobs.
Right. Well, or they get worked like slaves.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's why physician burnout is so high.
Yeah.
And, but when you actually go back and think about it, I mean, if you are sick, like, your health is everything. So for someone to think that they can just take their 5 minutes or their 15 minutes and ask you answer one question and then be on to the next person, I mean, it seems a little bit ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, how can you think that you gave good care? But on the other hand, they might not have any other option.
Right. Health insurance and all that stuff. Okay, so let's switch gears. I want to, you've mentioned it, bioidentical hormones. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I would have never known that there were two different types. So synthetic versus that. Tell me, excuse me, what the difference between those two, and why is that important to us?
So many of the things that you hear that are bad about hormone replacement therapy, because at one time, and kind of still, it's like it's taboo, like hormones.
Still kind of feels that way, doesn't it?
Yeah. Most of the studies that have all of these bad side effects, like cancers and blood clots and strokes, are from studies that studied synthetic hormones, not bioidentical hormones. So there is much confusion around that. So bioidentical hormones are often they come from plants like soy or yams, but the chemist has taken those and made them the same identical structure as what the body makes. So the same chemical structure as what the body makes. Like, there is no difference. So when you take bioidentical hormones, your body recognizes the chemical structure, knows what to do with it. It's well tolerated, normally very few side effects. When you take something that is synthetic, that is normally what is associated with those bad side effects that we talked about, because your body doesn't recognize it. So then the question becomes, well, why would you use synthetic hormones? Well, because Big Pharma cannot sell the bioidentical hormones. They're what your body makes. they didn't invent them, so they cannot
Can't
mass
patent that.
produce them, cannot patent them.
Yeah.
And that's why I was saying, like, a lot of times, you know, when you get put on the synthetics, like the progestins or Provera or the birth control pills, that is because there's nobody in their office pushing bioidenticals. They're only pushing the synthetics.
There's a lot of not good things that come from being on the synthetic hormones.
Yes.
Can you talk about some of those things?
Well, those are the ones that are normally associated with breast cancer. So, like, when I'm talking about estradiol is an estrogen, but I am not talking about the synthetics that Big Pharma makes, or like they use the conjugated equine estrogen, which is pregnant horse urine. Now, I don't know why you would give someone pregnant horse urine to replace their estradiol when you could just give them something that replicates exactly what their body already makes and is associated with all of these side effects. But, you know, again, political, economical.
Wow.
It's crazy.
It's
It's literally
unbelievable.
crazy.
Yeah.
And, you know, this is why, like, you know, the other things are migraine, headaches, diabetes, insulin resistance, the cancers, mood swings, all of these different things that you don't want.
Yeah. So you had mentioned birth control. Talk a little bit about this. I was talking to somebody about this earlier today, and how you were saying the birth control pill actually causes insulin resistance.
Yes.
Talk about that.
So another part of my story is that I am a patient too, because I have PCOS. I found out when I was 18 that I had PCOS. And besides really telling me that I had PCOS, that was it. It wasn't like...
Tell us what that means. What's PCOS mean?
Polycystic ovarian syndrome,
Okay.
and it affects women. They overproduce insulin. That is the underlying problem. So what goes along with this a lot of times is, you know, facial hair. You know, if you see like a woman and she kind of has like almost like a beard or hair on the face, she might have PCOS. They can also have a lot of acne, weight gain around the middle. And why PCOS is so bad is because it is associated with chronic diseases like high cholesterol, metabolic syndrome, heart attacks, like all of these things that we don't want. But there isn't very many people who understand it or know how to treat it. So what happens is you go to your PCP and you say, oh, well, I have acne, or, you know, I have really irregular cycles or really heavy periods. And they say, oh, you know, maybe you have PCOS, we'll put you on the birth control pill. Well, while that may help the skin symptoms, and maybe they have regular cycles or no cycles at all because they're on these hormones, birth control pills cause insulin resistance. So they are making the underlying problem for these women worse. And PCOS, insulin resistance, does not get better with age. It gets worse.
Yeah.
So we are really doing these young women a disservice by putting them on birth control pills, let alone, I think probably most of the women that I know have been put on birth control pills and have never once been told that they cause insulin resistance. I have a woman in my clinic who had an implantable birth control device, and despite being on 10 of Mounjaro, which is a big dose of Mounjaro, one of the GPO ones, her hemoglobin A1C continues to increase. And so we just recently got that taken out. I was like, but she's not the only one. I have other ones who, no matter what I do, I can't lose weight. Or the other thing that can happen, I have another patient like this, is they say, you know, oh, I have anxiety, you know, I feel like I don't know what's causing it, but I feel like I know there's something wrong. And sure enough, they have the insulin resistance already. They have PCOS. They've been put on birth control. And now they're having hypoglycemic episodes because when the insulin spikes so high, when it comes back down, it goes below their normal level. And so now
roller coaster.
Yeah. So, I really feel strongly that with all the side effects associated with synthetic hormones, that you should never be on them. If you go to your provider and they put you on birth control pills and tell you that you have PCOS, do not take it. I mean, you're just making the underlying cause worse.
Yeah. It's great information, and people are going to learn a lot from this. So let's switch gears.
Okay.
Hypothyroidism. What does that mean? Tell me what that is.
Well, so your thyroid is basically, if you wanted to look at it, it's what takes your food and converts it into energy. So
pretty important function there, huh?
Yes. And so that's why when people go and see their PCP and they say, I'm tired, I'm cold, I can't lose weight, even depressed, they say, sounds like you might have a thyroid problem. And what they do is they check a TSH, which is a non-active form of thyroid. And they check a T4, which is also another non-active form of thyroid. What actually happens is that T4 has to go to the liver to be converted into T3. Well, they didn't used to know that. So anybody that had a thyroid condition, you could kind of think of your thyroid as like the thermostat of your body. Mm-hmm. And so for a long time, everyone that had a thyroid condition was a hypothyroid condition was prescribed T3 and T4, desiccated thyroid extract. But then in the 1970s was when the science discovered that we converted T4 to T3 on our own. Big Pharma came out with Synthroid.
Another synthetic.
Yes. And
you see a pattern here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when they came out with that, they kind of went around to all the experts that studied thyroid endocrinologists and, you know, incentivized them to promote Synthroid, and TSH became the gold standard, and Synthroid became the replacement. Interestingly enough, the people who had been on the T3 and T4 desiccated thyroid extract before this were all starting to complain that their thyroid symptoms were not well controlled. Well,
imagine that, huh?
So with Big Pharma's influence, then it became taboo to prescribe T3, and then none of these patients could get prescribed their medicine anymore. So there is a book called Rethinking Hypothyroidism, and it is written by the ex-president of the American Thyroid Association, who talks all about this. And the purpose of the book is to teach patients to be able to advocate for getting on thyroid replacement when they go see their providers. The thing is that we never even draw a T3. So it never even gets that far. So you look at primary hypothyroidism, which is when your TSH increases. and then you can look at subclinical hypothyroidism. But there's also this thing which you maybe have heard some people talk about with insulin resistance. You can also have thyroid resistance because every cell has a receptor site for T3, for insulin. And so if the hormone is, the key and the receptor is the lock, that key stops fitting the lock so well. So they could even have something like low T3 syndrome and it not show up on the lab work. And then lab work, you go and they say, oh, well, everything's normal. Well, what's normal? Normal is based on a population that is your age and is sick.
And
that's where, that's where they're getting all of these levels from. We don't want normal. We want optimal levels that a young, healthy person has. So that's not always going to be in the normal range.
So if that's your decision-making process based on average, that's not going to be great.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, because
it's going to be wrong.
Well, yeah, because if you think about that, who's going and getting blood work done on a regular basis? It's the people who are sick going to the hospital and they're drawing bloods. So if you look at the sample size of who is deemed normal, it's just the people who are going
healthy,
to.
you're not going to go get your blood
exactly.
drawn.
So you're only pulling it from the sick people, and that is what is normal.
So the other thing is primary care physicians will freak out if you replace somebody's T3 and their TSH comes back at 0. They're going to say they're hyperthyroidism. You're causing them to be hyperthyroidism. They're going to have thyroid storm. Well, what people fail to understand is the different types of research studies and what they mean. So if you do an observation study with endogenous hormones, meaning what the patient naturally makes, that represents one thing. That does not mean that when you do a randomized control trial and you give a patient hormones, exogenous, that those look the same. They look totally different. We care about what happens when we give it and what the result is. We're not talking about just what people's levels are naturally. That's endogenous. That's different. And so that also looks very different when you're replacing hormones. And if you read any studies that say, well, we observed or associated with, that's worthless. Like, if you haven't done a randomized controlled study, then we don't care. If you didn't test it, if you didn't give it and see what happens, then it's useless.
So how long did it take you to actually see somebody's blood work and really look at it and diagnose things like that? I mean, there's a lot of knowledge that you have, and you're looking at something that maybe a normal doctor or somebody else maybe wouldn't see.
Well, I think that they don't have, as far as like looking at hormone levels, they don't get that training. So most of them,
from WorldLink that you learned to do that? Mm-hmm.
Okay. So they're not going to understand it. They're most likely not going to order the levels. So that's where all your women that are in perimenopause and menopause basically get no help.
Yeah.
Or your men that are walking around with these low testosterone levels get no help because, and this number has just gone down over the years. I mean, so regarding testosterone, what I say is that it's bioidentical testosterone. So they can't
patent it.
Yes. And
so they're not going to prescribe it.
Right. Well, because Big Pharma's not making any money off of it, so they just keep the normal level just keeps going down, and it's like, no, that's not what we see is optimal. That's not where people feel their best.
Just that one thing in our population would probably change the health of our country. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
I mean,
You're going to be more confident. You're going to be more of an independent thinker. Testosterone, one of our biggest problems you were saying that you heard from Peterson is insulin resistance.
yeah.
One of the reasons that hormone therapy works so well for prevention and getting rid of disease is because it taps into insulin resistance. These hormones work to lower insulin levels, and mainstream medicine is reactive medicine. It is
Right.
not preventative medicine.
Right. That's
So
exactly.
they are not even, they don't even know probably how to look for insulin resistance. They're waiting where your insulin resistance may have shown up 10 years prior. They're waiting until they get a hemoglobin A1C and see that you're actually diabetic.
Yeah.
I mean, so we want to start treating way before that. And that's where hormones come in, like, progesterone. A lot of times they'll just put people on estradiol and they won't put them on progesterone. Well, then they're robbing you of one of the best hormones ever if you're a female, because this is like nature's Xanax. This is like, oh, I can relax again. Oh, I'm not up at 3 o'clock in the morning. I can sleep through the night. Oh, I feel centered again.
Yeah.
And it is a feel good. It is normally very well tolerated. Whereas you take the progestins and mood swings, can't lose weight, all things all over the place that no woman wants.
Yeah.
So, and I don't think you ever put a guy on testosterone that says he doesn't feel better.
Yeah.
But it's a very simple way to approach aging and health. We look at the labs, we look at how you feel, talk about it, and then take what your body has stopped making over time and replace it to the levels it used to be. It is that simple.
And no synthetic.
No synthetics.
So let's switch gears. We're about done, but I want to talk about insulin resistance. That seems like, well, help me understand. I know kind of what it is, but can it be reversed? Number one, can insulin resistance, can your body start working correctly? And
Yes.
and what are the things that can lead to? I mean, obviously type 2 diabetes, but there's other things too, isn't there?
Well, to simplify it, so let's say somebody goes to like a hormone clinic, and they're just checking testosterone, estradiol, progesterone, whatever. And they're saying, well, here's your level. Here's what we're going to do. See you later. What we are doing is we are taking the hormones, progesterone, estradiol, testosterone, DHEA, thyroid, and we are using them to decrease insulin resistance and decrease the highly inflammatory visceral fat around the organs, because we know that this is what causes inflammation, and inflammation is what causes chronic disease. So absolutely, insulin resistance can be reversed. And that's why your GPL-1s are so effective, because they lower your insulin levels. They prevent that spike. Yes, they cut out food noise. They make food sit in the stomach longer. But why they work, in addition, is the same reason that when you do intermittent fasting, that works to lose weight, because you drop those insulin levels. The other job of insulin is to store fat. So if like 75% or more people, if you're like them that are walking around out there, they have no idea they have insulin resistance and also no idea why they can't lose weight. Well, they're walking around with those high insulin levels, and so the body says, my other job is to store fat. So it's not going to let you tap into your fat stores.
Okay.
But
It just keeps depositing.
Yeah, and that's where you get your triglycerides. Triglycerides are a reflection of sugar, not necessarily fat. It's like one sugar to every three fats. You decrease your blood sugars, you decrease those insulin levels, you'll see your triglycerides go down. That's why somebody who has high triglycerides or, high cholesterol, you put them on a keto high fat diet. I mean, because you're wanting to get rid of the sugar. The sugar is the problem. Cancer is a metabolic disease. So these GPL-1s and everything that we're doing to lower those insulin levels, you can see how it just makes sense that it would be a cancer preventative.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell us what GPL-1, what's that mean?
That is a peptide that your body already makes. Big Pharma couldn't market that either if they didn't put a dosing schedule with it.
Oh.
And it hits that receptor like we were talking about. And like I said, it tells the brain when you're full. It makes food sit in the stomach a little bit longer. So if you overeat on it, you're going to get nauseated, could have some vomiting. Not a good idea. Stop eating when you're full, even if you can only eat a little bit. So people always say, well, I don't want to get Ozempic face, or I don't want, or are those GPL-1s, Ozempic, Mounjaro, are those bad? No, they're great. They're in the fact that you are going to get out of them what you put into them. If you go on them and you don't metabolically retrain yourself and your diet and increase your protein is key. Muscle is key for longevity. If you don't make the changes and you never eat, and when you do eat, you just eat junk, well, you're just going to kind of waste away. That's not going to help you. And likely when you go off of it, now you're just going to gain back a whole bunch of fat where maybe you at least did have some muscle. Now you don't have fat or muscle. I mean,
So you're
you're worse off.
Yeah.
So, but if you use them in a way that's healthy, and you use the discipline that you get from them to, eat your protein and eat whole foods and exercise and do all of the right things, they're extremely beneficial.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. A couple more things.
Okay.
So what do you think the biggest challenge that our society has from a health standpoint right now? I mean, Jordan Peterson would say insulin resistance is probably one of the biggest things. Probably agree with that. But, the average person listening to the podcast, maybe, mid 40s, 50s, something like that. And they're like, man, I'd like to feel better. What is the biggest challenge that they have? Is it what they're eating? I got to be honest. I mean, you running a business, Brian, it's like sometimes you're so busy. It's like, I'm just going to pull through and get something real quick, and that's going to tide me over. It's probably the worst thing we could do when it comes to food.
Yeah.
Is it our food supply? Is it just stress in general? I mean, what would you say?
Well, not having a positive outlet for stress is going to impact all your other hormones. Our food supply is terrible. Seed oils, then there's estrogen disruptors in the environment.
What? I didn't even know that.
The microplastics and all the water bottles that we use. I mean, it's you almost can't get away from it. It's unless you really got to focus on eating at home and knowing what you're putting in your body and eating clean. But I think the food is just
that's got to be the biggest.
It's the biggest thing. And if you think about the health of Americans versus the health of the Europeans, and that the Europeans have outlawed all these dyes, and now it's a big thing that in the media right now, and trying to trying to get rid of the dyes, the red dyes, the yellow dyes, the blue dyes that are still in all of our stuff that isn't anywhere in Europe.
Yeah.
It's like, what are we doing to our own population?
It's greed.
It's terrible. And so then
Because there's benefit to the manufacturer for putting those in there, like
it's all
lasting
follow the
longer
dollars.
and
It's longer shelf life.
looks better. You're
yeah,
going to buy it
it's
because
I'm
it
gonna
looks
I'm
better.
gonna send it to my kids because I'm gonna market it to the kids because the kids want the Fruit Loops because the Fruit Loops look prettier. Then I'm gonna buy more Fruit Loops if whatever can make it look, more colorful.
Yeah.
If you follow the dollars, it's all back to dollars. If I can make the cow be heavier and put on weight faster, and I feed them a bunch of junk, but I can get more meat out of that cow, then I've got making more money. It really is greed, and it's really unfortunate that it's so hard to get away from it. But I mean, Americans have become very lazy.
I have a patient. He's from France,
Yeah.
and he said he can go home and he can eat all the pasta and bread he wants. He won't gain a pound. He doesn't feel bad. But over here, we're spraying everything with folic acid. And so that's when you get the enriched, when it says enriched on there, well, that basically means it's been stripped of everything, like.
But enriched sounds like a good word, right? It
Yeah.
sounds like, whoa, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And I think I was telling you about how in the U.S., girls go into puberty earlier than any other country. And our men also have these really low testosterone levels. And what that has been linked to is one of the pesticides that they spray like 70,000 pounds of in the U.S. that's outlawed in Europe. And I'm trying to think of what the name of that was, but they put it on a male frog and the male frog turns female. Like that's how bad
What?
it is for us.
Oh my gosh.
But it's allowed because somebody pays somebody off.
Yeah. My son and my daughter-in-law on their honeymoon went to Italy, and they were saying, and they love wine. They drink wine a lot, and they went to a pasta class and all this stuff. And they said the exact same thing. Like they drink so much wine over there, it's kind of like water almost to them. Never a hangover. You never feel bad. Like something we're doing in the United States, like the bread and the wine and the pasta, like you're talking about, is making us sick.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, so just trying to, eat organic, trying to stay away from the things in the environment. That's
Nearly
a
impossible.
huge challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's why I was hoping with the work with Kennedy would have an impact.
Yeah.
And he's starting to. Some states have
is.
started outlawing some of the dyes. Some of the
Yeah.
states are starting to regulate what the kids eat for school lunches. I mean, they're doing some stuff to helping with make the SNAP program more healthy options versus the cheaper, easier, unhealthy options. So they're making some changes. It's just we've made so many poor choices for so many decades. It's hard to get that train switched to a different track.
Yeah. Really
Well,
tough.
And the ethics of it is that you should be able to walk into a store and buy toiletries and buy food and take for granted that it is all safe, right?
Should be able to.
I mean, isn't that why we have this FDA? And
Yeah.
I mean, and it's absolutely ridiculous that because of greed, you can't.
Yeah.
And there are so many people who don't even know that.
I think we need to do a cooking show. What do you think about that? We need to
Sounds
teach.
like fun.
I mean, being funny, but really, you think about it. Most people don't even know how to cook clean.
Well, but you've been told that butter is bad for you, and it's just not the case. There's so many things that were taught to us that this food is bad and this food is good, and it's almost like you almost have to swap it because it's not the case.
And it goes back to those studies. Those studies are crap.
And who funded those studies?
Well,
Yeah.
exactly.
And where are they
Follow the
working?
money.
Yeah.
And
Follow
where
the
are they
money.
and where are they working now? Probably.
All right.
some
I
of
have
those
a new
companies.
idea for documentary. All right. So, well, I want to go ahead and wrap it up. This has been great. I almost wonder if we shouldn't do it again and we should dive deep, like into some of this stuff, because I do think I love learning about these things. Although it's a little concerning when you start learning about some of the things that you're talking about. But I think people need to be educated. I mean, the average person knows none of what we talked about today. I didn't know some of this stuff 2 months ago.
Well, and that's why, like you said, when you came and saw me, like, we sit down and we talk because everybody is a little bit different. And that's why if you go someplace where they just a protocol, it's not going to work. But we sit down and we talk about all of these factors and everything that could be influencing your health and your situation and what your labs look like and what it means. Because if you tell someone the significance of why they're doing something, then they're a lot more likely to follow through and keep doing it. And then, you educate one person and they go educate somebody else. I mean, we need to, spread awareness. But it's not just, giving a pill or giving a shot. We're using these hormones for the impact that it has on your overall health and to keep you healthy, not just give you something that makes you feel better, but it's deeper than that.
One thing real quick, I was thinking about, there's a mental health crisis in the United States right now too. And it has to have a lot to do with what we've talked about today.
It absolutely does. That's something that Dr. Rouzier talks about at WorldLink, and there's a psychiatrist that he mentions frequently who thinks that it is a lot about hormones and hormone replacement therapy, and where a lot of times you go to your PCP and you report some of the symptoms that you're having, and they say, oh, well, you might benefit from, an SSRI or antidepressant. And it's not really that you need something like that. You just need more of what your body used to make.
Yeah.
Literally, that's where I was. I mean, you could have given me an antidepressant like before I got optimized, right? Because you just feel lethargic. You could go sit through and say, these are my symptoms. I'm depressed. Go give me a pill.
By the way, the drug rep said this would work for me.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Well, this is our latest.
Here's a trip to Bahamas if you...
Yeah. But thankfully, I've got Melissa over here, and she's like, let's just get your hormones. And then you feel good.
So, and then normally what I see is this snowball effect where we give you back what your body was making. So we increase those testosterone levels or we optimize the thyroid. What happens is you start feeling better. So you start having more energy. So you start working out. And then your eating changes because you don't want when you're working out, you don't want to go backwards by what you eat and have it destroy your progress. You want to have it help what you're doing overall. So you start making better eating choices. Or maybe somebody like had people who, maybe one of the reasons that they couldn't lose weight is because they like to drink a lot of alcohol. Well, alcohol inhibits fat loss. So it's like, well, every time you go and have that drink after you have been to the gym and you've worked out for an hour and, you're taking all your hormones, you're doing all the things, that alcohol probably sets you back about 48 hours.
Man.
So it's it's a battle of knowing, but once you increase the energy levels, then it kind of snowballs and people just start doing the things automatically and they
want
just,
to.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, the desire.
That was me in a nutshell. I didn't want to go home and have a beer because I knew that I just worked out. That's going to ruin that. I don't want to go to McDonald's on the way home because I just worked out. So let me eat healthy.
Yeah.
So let me continue to progress on the cycle. Okay, so now I'm working out, but am I actually getting the most out of my gym when I go there? Nope. Let me get a trainer. And so Jillian helped me with that. And so it's a snowball effect where now I feel amazing and have the energy and love life.
So that made me think of something about when you were talking about insulin resistance. So if you're one of these people out there that is eating their protein and feel like you have a pretty good diet, and you're going to the gym, and you're doing strength training and maybe a little bit of cardio and whatnot, and you're not seeing any results. That can absolutely happen because of insulin resistance, because you're not going to be able to tap into those fat stores like we were talking about if your insulin levels are high. And that is the case for a lot of people,
Yeah.
and they just don't know it.
Yeah. All right. So that's the perfect transition. Okay. So how would somebody get a hold of you? What's the best way to get a hold of you? I know I did it through the contact form on your webpage, but tell the listeners how they can get a hold of you.
You can go to our website and you can schedule online, or you can call the office.
IntelligentHealth.com or IntelligentHealthKC.com.
IntelligentHealthKC.com.
Okay.
Or you can call us at the office, and if we're busy with the patient or it's after hours, then we'll call you back and schedule that way.
Yeah, and the phone number for that is 913-440-4794.
4794.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And we're normally both there. Brian kind of handles the front desk and the business side of things, where I do all, and I kind of stick to all the clinical stuff.
By the way, I noticed the painting in the front office area was immaculate.
Thanks. The elbow grease.
So
sweat equity.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then just that first appointment, what can they expect? I mean, like, do you actually do like blood work? I asked them to do blood work that first appointment. You talk with them. It's usually about an hour.
Yeah. So the first appointment, I give you a quiz, like the Adam questionnaire if you're a man and you're wanting to get on testosterone, or a much lengthier quiz if you're female. And it's grouped into different hormone categories that kind of gives me an idea before I even meet with you what's going on. And then we can talk about your symptoms more in depth, your past medical history. You'll get some e-forms before you come in, that like consent and just your basic stuff. And then we draw your blood levels. And then I usually have you come back in a week, and we sit down together and we go over all your labs in depthly and what they mean, and we come up with a plan together.
And it starts then.
Yep.
Well, I really appreciate you guys coming on. The last thing I always have people do on the podcast is, this is called In a World with Real Media, so you have to do the movie voice, okay? So I want you both to take a shot at this, okay, to see if you can pull it off.
Okay.
You have to get really close to the mic and you go, in a world with real media. Okay? Do you want to go first?
Together? Oh, it's individual. Okay.
Yeah.
In a world with real media.
I'd like the look on your face.
Very serious. Yes.
All right, Brian, come on.
In a world with real media.
Perfect. You guys are going to end up on our fun reel.
Oh, good.
Well, again, thanks for coming on, guys. Really amazing. A lot of great information.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. And so be sure to share this podcast. This is a really important podcast. A lot of people need to see this information and understand what's happening. It is life-changing when you think about what can actually happen. I mean, but Melissa and Brian, they can impact a lot of lives in a very positive way. So be sure to share this podcast, subscribe. Tell your friends about it. It's really, really an awesome thing. And thank you for joining us. And this is In a World with Real Media. This has been In a World with Real Media. Thanks for joining us. And be sure to subscribe on iTunes and follow Real Media on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn so you never miss an episode.